So a little surprise live stream because we've been sitting on some of these drafting table episodes and I decided, you know what, we're gonna do it live because I want to say we have a friend out there, Glyph. He's gonna be saying, wait, what? Where's my episode? This music is Chef's Kiss, by the way.
Thank you, buddy.
It's an original piece, yeah? You did this.
Yes, sir. This is a Brownson original.
My friend, it is. I feel like it's made for this moment. It's got the vibe. It's got.
What can I say? Your boy knows how to cook.
Yeah, really good. Really good. I mean, surprisingly good. I'm not going to say I'm surprised at the cleverness and that you have the skill. I just wasn't expecting this to be the music. It's very good. But yeah, so first I want to say, hey, Glyph, we're working on editing. We ran into some technical stuff that involved Adobe, and they can, they can eat it. But today we're going to do this episode of the Drafting Table with a good friend of the show. Somebody that we've hang out with frequently. Someone I've been able to do a couple different games, live streams. I can always depend on this guy to be giving us the business in chat, making us laugh, just basically creating all kinds of problems and issues in only the best way. It is our friend, Brandon Brownson.
What a perfect music in the moment to make that transition.
I'm telling you, my friend, I time it on the 8s. Wow, that song is awesome. Tell me about that song, please.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Brandon Brownson. I'm from the podcast Masks and Mayhem, where one of my jobs is, since I've come onto the show, actually the original link between me and RC as far as the show is concerned was he came to me asking if I would be willing to make music for the show. And it's the way that life happened. It actually wound up that I became a cast member before I could start really getting into making music for the show. Yeah. But once I had gotten started with that, I started with all the character themes, the theme for the show. And after that, it was, okay, well, I need to start getting my atmosphere music down. And the most obvious place to start for me was, okay, well, we're a superhero show. We do a whole lot of fighting. Should probably make some badass fight music.
Right on.
And, I'm a huge fan of synthwave music. I listen to a lot of soundtracks from the 1980s. So I just started playing around with that sound. I don't know if I was trying to make something for the show in particular when I opened up FL Studio that day, but I eventually start noodling around with it, and I'm like, okay, this sounds really cool. I think I'm done with the song, and then like a couple days later, well, hang on, what if I went and I added this to it? And,
sure.
You think you're done with the song, and a couple days later, well, what if I did this, and so on and so forth, until eventually it crescendoed into this track, Violence in North End.
It's got a real montage feel. It's got a real fighting the man and running the city, and I love it. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. I like to imagine that song is like, this is a fighting game. You're on the Blade Runner stage. Here's the music slapped.
Yes, that's great. Yeah, I dig it quite a bit. And so the drafting table, for those folks who are like, what's the drafting table? It is an opportunity for me just to indulge my curiosity to learn more about people who are playing Mutants and Masterminds, and or very derivations of Mutants and Masterminds, and the character work that goes into each person that I talk to, especially for Mutants and Masterminds, and I'm certain maybe it's more powerful with Mutants and Masterminds than I've seen it be with any other space. And the detail, the thought, the imagination, and also just the care. And it is as much as it is kind of a discussion about how character building works and the kind of things you have to think about in the context of a TTRPG called Mutants Masterminds, it's a window into the person. And so I really appreciate you wanting to be a part of this. And
Of
it's just sort of
course.
my special project, and it's great to have you. So we're talking about, is it Brock Bollea?
Brock Bollea, aka Lazerhawk.
Nice. So uh, give me a little background, like let's start with sort of like what kind of character we're talking about. And hey, Claude, good to see you, friend. Um,
Hey.
give
Um,
me, yeah, just talk to me about like what the powers are, and then maybe we can get into origin story and sort of
yeah.
the meta of it all. Go for it.
Yeah. So, I created Brock Bollea when our friend Sama, who was previously on the show Masks and Mayhem, she left. RC offered for me to come and fill the vacant slot. So I had this unique opportunity to be able to um, look at the party, look at what dynamics are at play, look at most importantly what we needed. And the thing that I realized was needed was a tank. So,
Okay.
for probably, I think this was the first time I ever built a character with like a mechanic in mind first. Because usually I go very heavy into the role play aspect, which obviously I do with Brock, but it started off as okay, well, I need to build. This is the guy getting his ass kicked while everyone else is getting the job done. So
Gotcha. So you needed that role was an integral part of kind of what was going on with the kind of balance of the team.
exactly.
Gotcha.
So powers wise, Brock Bollea has laser abilities. He has this kind of energy shield around him at all times, which I've named Saint Skywalker's armor, that kind of lets him get his ass kicked and be able to keep fighting.
Okay.
Offensively, he is able to surround his fist, well, any body part really, but usually a fist in like a aura of multicolored laser energy in an attack known as the Taser Fist.
Okay.
I,
And are
I
we seeing sort of a variation of Taser Fist here in the art?
So in the art, what you are seeing is my ranged attack, which I call a solar shotgun.
Okay.
And then I have this big ultimate final attack that kicks my ass as well, called Megasonic Missile, where essentially my entire body channels a missile of laser energy which can hit 1 to 5 people and ruin 2 to 6 people's days.
Okay. All right, I get it. Why don't we do this real quick? I'm gonna pop this open. Yeah, that works out just perfectly. So here's the character sheet, and I know we want to kind of pop this up too because this is a little custom job.
Indeed, RC for the show Mask and Mayhem actually had custom character sheets done for us, which I think is the coolest thing in the world. I've never been in a campaign that had custom character sheets for the
That's great.
campaign. I will say that for anyone at home who might look at this sheet and notice something a little weird, I am in the middle of retooling a couple of things with Brock. This could be something that we could get into a little later, but an idea that I have is like Brock's old. He is an aging superhero,
Hmm.
and I think it might be fun to have that reflect with how he ages throughout the show and have that
Okay.
reflect mechanically. Um,
Talk
so
to
if
me. Well,
any,
talk to me about that. Let's get into it.
well, I haven't reworked too much yet, but essentially the idea I have is that Brock getting older, his like some of his physical abilities might not be where they once were. Like right now he's got a stamina of like 6,
Hmm.
he's getting older. It would make sense for that to maybe drop down to a 5, or he's banged up, so maybe even a 4. But in turn, that'll give me more points to be able to play around with some of the other ideas that I have for Brock in the future. He started off as mechanically one thing, but also story wise one thing, and that's something that I'm sure we're going to get into a little later. But
Absolutely, yeah.
as his story evolves from a man on a revenge mission into a man who is caring for a family, whether that
Hmm.
be blood or people who he's picked up along the way.
Sure.
I'd like for certain things on his character sheet to reflect that more. Like, uh, God, I'm blanking on the name of the nice skill because I never use persuasion. Like, for example, yeah, he's got a 3 in persuasion right now, but Brock as a character has become a nicer, friendlier person. So,
Sure. Okay.
maybe some of the points that I lose from him getting older physically go into, something like that.
Well, very
Or
interesting.
I've
So you're saying you okay, this is fascinating. And this is actually the first time on the drafting table that we really talked about that. I'm curious for folks that are in chat, do you evolve your characters in for Mutants and Masterminds in this same way? Because it's brilliant, but you're saying so you know, maybe there are some aspects of this, of Brock that are not as useful in his evolved self, and so you kind of play around with the map a bit that makes sense in the story to your storyline and to how easy is that to do? How is it common?
um I don't think I've ever talked to anyone who, when given the opportunity to upgrade a character, have decided to intentionally make certain things worse. I feel like I might be going into bold, new, and potentially foolish territory
Well,
yet.
Mutants and Masterminds kinds of it lends itself to that discussion of, it's not just superhero, super duper, you can play that way as well, but the whole idea of complications and, failings is kind of built into the DNA, right?
Exactly.
I dig it. I dig it a
Um,
lot.
like the primary thing, like ironically enough, I built Brock around the idea of a mechanic, but throughout a lot of what I've done building up Brock, it's been with the intention of, obviously I'm playing a game, but making this character for a podcast. I'm also trying to tell a story with him. I'm trying to make him narratively interesting, and it's really fun, and I'm able to find a way to do that with like the mechanics of the game here.
Claude shares that, yeah, there's a lot of people that do that, or a handful anyway, but so not uncommon. I love that. A question for you. So, for any of these attacks or the advantages, will you adjust anything with your powers and devices that reflect this change or this evolution of character?
Yes, that's actually something that I was thinking about. In particular, the power megasonic missile.
Hmm.
Uh, I would love to retool that to where it really fucks me up. Should I be dropping f bombs on here? I should have asked that before we started.
We will say that we are a PG-13, so you have a budget of 1, and now you have spent it. So
Fair enough. My apologies, everyone.
no,
I hope
no.
your kids weren't listening. But no, I like that is supposed to be an attack that like does just as much damage to Brock as it does Brock's enemies. But I roll really good because I have a wonderful dice. I call him Big Green. He is the reason that Brock Bollea is cool.
Okay.
Um, but as a result of that, this attack, it doesn't really have the intended effect of dealing just as much damage to me as my opponents. That is something I would love to rework. Potentially making Saint Skywalker's armor a little weaker, making the effect of Megasonic Missile a little beefier, things like
Okay.
that. A lot of the mechanics, I'll admit, like a lot of the deep mechanical stuff, I have RC help me out with a lot of it. Like with this character
Sure. I
in
hear you there.
particular,
Yeah.
Brock Bollea was the first character I ever built for Mutants and Masterminds, and I had very little understanding of what the hell I was doing. I think I'm at the point now where if I were to remake Brock Bolea's character sheet, I I I almost know what I'm doing now, so I feel like it'd
Yeah.
be pretty cool.
Well, yeah, I think so too. I mean, it does make the question sort of what of the attacks and the advantages and sort of the stuff you started out with gets, sort of you evolve out of needing to use it or using it in the way. Like what when you think about the character's kind of, trauma or origin story, what changes when Brock is not as bad?
Um,
I saw that. Yeah. Better watch it says you spelled that.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But that's okay.
yeah.
Gnag is
No,
fine.
in fairness, I never expected that this character sheet was going to be on a podcast where who knows how many people, or not a podcast, but a live stream where who knows how many people could watch it. So,
Hundreds.
that was I'm well aware of that typo. I just never thought to fix it. And boy, howdy is there egg on my face now.
No. I honestly, it adds some texture. I like it.
Um,
But
but
yeah,
I got
so
completely distracted by that typo. Could you
well,
please repeat the question?
yeah.
I'm
So,
so
so
sorry.
thinking about the character's origin story, and when you look, yeah, exactly. RC's like, well, it's the midnight Gnag then.
Oh, I have definitely made
It's
that joke
canon
has
now.
definitely been cut out before.
But my question for you is, when you think about the origin story of the character and the powers that were informed by that origin story, I mean, it's not all just sort of, oh, you're getting older, more pain. Like, is there an opportunity here to sort of say, you're getting older, you get, you're evolving in this way. It's going to benefit you, I think you did kind of touch on that a little bit with persuasion and sort of bumping that
Yeah,
up a bit. And yeah, what are some other ways
yeah.
that you
Like
would adjust the character?
I mean, off the top of my head, it's hard to say. I'd have to look at the different advantages and things that I could take. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Brock primarily was built to be an offensive character. Everything else is tertiary in making
I
him.
see.
Secondary does not exist with Brock. It goes offense, and then way back here is everything else.
And so why did you choose that?
Um, I mean, mechanically, it's because that is what the party needed the most.
Sure.
Thank you, Claude. I am quite proud of Pulsar Pogo.
That's very cool.
That is my jumping ability.
Yeah.
But mechanically, we had a diplomat, we had an illusion character, we had people who could be defensive, we had all of this stuff, but we didn't have someone whose whole thing was I beat people up.
Right. Gotcha.
So, and as far as his story goes, Brock Bollea, when we meet him on Masks and Mayhem, he is a guy who is trying to find the people that murdered his fiance right in front of him. And so I feel like mechanically it makes sense that, of course, the stats represent that tunnel vision that he has.
Mm-hmm.
This is all that exists to him. He left his family behind. He left friends behind. He left everything behind to track down and imprison the people that killed his family. But now, or not killed his family, killed his fiance. But now, it's been a couple years since he's imprisoned the Midnight Gang. Brock has began to move past that. Brock actually goes out to bars with friends. He has his son in town now, and he has a wonderful relationship with him. Brock has a great relationship with his ex-wife, who left him for because of the superhero stuff. And now looking at the sheet, it's it's hard to say what exactly I would change because there's so many different options now.
Right.
This is no longer a man on a mission. The way that I always worded it was that Brock Bollea has at how I introduced him had a 3 act structure. In season 1, we had Brock the Mission. In season 2, it was Brock the Mess. And with this rework here, I'm really looking forward to seeing the final arc of this original story, Brock the Man.
Okay, I dig that. Well, I really like that, and I think too that. So, what about Brock, or what is it? How have you sort of what aspects of Brock reflect you?
Um, well, it's a running gag that everything I've introduced in the show, in some way, shape, or form, is a reflection of my own trauma.
Sure, sure.
And I mean, to just throw the door wide open there, Brock Bollea is a character built entirely out of my own projected abandonment issues and feelings of guilt.
Mm,
Um, I find that with a lot of characters that I have done, it's been me, taking something that it's kind of difficult for me to be able to put it into regular terms, but I've always understood the world through a creative lens.
okay.
Like there have been emotions and moments in my life that I could only properly describe through like music, for example. Um,
Yeah.
and I find that with both the avenue of role playing and also the avenue of telling stories within the tropes and confines of a comic book universe, it offers a lot of unique opportunities to be able to kind of take the ugliest parts of one's psyche and be able to do something positive with it.
Sure, sure. I mean, yeah. That.
Another character who I don't think I properly introduced into the show yet, but I feel kind of illustrates the point I'm trying to make is, I wasn't kind to my body when I was young, so I deal with a lot of pain. So it gave me the idea for like this character who shoots fire who feels it,
Mm,
but he keeps going on because it's the right thing to do. It's what he needs to do.
so he's got to
He,
power through this pain
exactly.
to get the good thing done. Gotcha.
The character Mosey Buzzov that I created, that was a character who me and my creative life partner Damos worked on together. But a lot of what I introduced into that, was based on my own experience being a child that had to grow up entirely too quickly.
Yeah.
A lot of what makes these characters so special to me is that I've been able to take something unique with each of them that within myself I have found disgusting and vile and indescribable, and yet I've been able to make these characters and help build this world out of my own bullshit. And in a way, it's really helped me be able to grasp a lot of the things that I've had to deal with, a lot of the trauma that I've wrestled with. It's just been this incredible. RC doesn't realize that he's secretly my therapist, but that's
I got to tell you, my friend, th- there's a moment during these drafting tables where people start to really talk about sort of their connection to the character, and this is what it's all about. Like it is therapy. It is, and it's also an effective tool for you to actively work through pieces of your past or pieces of your present, all of those pieces, and to, the idea that there would be some people that might balk at the idea of like playing games to feel better or to work through trauma. I think it's one of the most effective tools to help you, really process that
I,
stuff and to be the person that you aspire to be.
yeah, that's a fantastic way of putting it. Like, Brock Bollea is, the perfect mix of my trauma and my father's trauma, and that together has been able to make something beautiful. And, it's something that, is so unique within the role play experience. you know, I love video games, but I don't exactly get this playing Fallout.
Right.
You know, this
Absolutely.
isn't
Yeah.
an experience that you can get playing baseball or Monopoly or
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, TTRPGs, role-playing games in general, pen and paper are certainly more intimate.
yeah.
Certainly more. So I want to, speaking of sort of intimacy and the idea of Brock becoming like, having a relationship with a kid and having other sort of opposing sort of, villains and people with opposing sort of agendas. I want to unpack some of these characters. You hinted at one. You talked about your son, right?
My son,
Brock's son, your son.
Carl
Yeah.
Lance Bollea, who I lovingly call Jimothy because
Jimothy.
Brandon, the player, for the longest time, could not remember my fictional son's name. Which RC still makes fun. Everyone still makes fun of me too. About to this day.
I love that, and yeah, you did almost forget him. So let's talk a little bit about like these characters, how they came about, and what role they play, and then also just what the deeper sort of representation means.
So with Carl Lance Bollea,
Uh,
as a side note, I can tell that I might be a little too invested in this show because I have genuine love for this fictional child.
can I say something
Um,
too, just as for a little ground rules?
yeah.
It's beautiful. The conversation that we're having is amazing, and I want you to know, like, not 1 ounce of sort of worry or shame, or are you doing too much, or is it, you're doing exactly what you need to do, and it's lovely. You produce great content that entertains and delights people. So it is a delight and an honor to have you speak to these things, and I certainly don't want you to get into sort of areas that are uncomfortable, but not 1 ounce of shame will be allowed.
Oh, no problem at all.
Good. I mean, yeah.
Um, Wonderful. So the idea with Carl started from the idea that I wanted Brock to be an older character. I wanted him because Yardak. Yardak is technically older than all of us, but he's played as like a 20-year-old.
Okay, so folks might not necessarily. So if they're hearing it for the first
Yes.
time, Yardak is.
Yeah, so Yardak is one of the other people within the party. He is an Atlantean. So he is like 200 something years old. He was born in the 1800s, but because of Atlantean physiology, he essentially looks and acts like a 20 something year old.
Sure. And that
And
is a character played by.
that is played by Dan Bell.
Awesome.
And then our friend Rachel Bloom, not that one, not the famous one, the my friend Rachel.
A
She
soon to be famous
plays
one, yeah.
soon to be famous. The show's gonna blow up, mark my word. She plays Ruby Lawson, who is
Oops, sorry.
someone who is a little bit younger than the IRL Rachel. So maybe I think at this point in the show she'd be like 28, 29 years old, somewhere in that ballpark. But when I came on, she was like, 25, 26. So, with an older character, I thought that was, there was an opportunity to tell a lot of story, before ever meeting him. And one of the, things I thought would be fun was, having him be from a marriage that didn't quite work out, but not going the stereotypical Hollywood cliche way of it, starting somewhere with that.
Yeah.
But having it evolve into something different and healthy and positive. So with Carl, I kind of knew that I wanted um things to be a little weird with him where we begin. So, Brock again kind of completely abandoned everything, including his son, to go get revenge.
Right.
Um, I a lot of Carl's mannerisms and actions and how he actually comes across on the show, a lot of that is portrayed by RC, and I have to commend him for the job that he's done with Carl. Again, I actually love this fictional child, me the player. But I knew that and again, this comes from my own trauma. My dad wasn't there for me when I was a kid, and eventually he came back, and it was really weird building that relationship.
But
But
but I like that idea of the perseverance and the where you had a character, a main character
yeah,
that didn't have the tools to do the things that one would expect a dad to do,
yeah, and
and then now he's back.
yeah, and something that I think was really special, and like this just sort of happened. I don't think that RC or I planned on this going into it. But something I think is really special about the relationship between Carl and Lance that we've been able to see on the show is the fact that their relationship wasn't fixed by Brock saving his child. Brock, I don't want to say too much because big fat spoilers for very recent things, but
RC
you know
brings up a good point as well. I want to get in here, which is that what he appreciated about it was that you don't often get to see what happens after the revenge story. Like it's kind of that's where the story kind of trails off. But this
and
is yeah.
and that was a very important thing that I wanted to do. That was something major that I wanted to do with Brock in a lot of aspects. Season one, Brock is at his most cliche, and the season one finale is, where the movie ends.
Mm-hmm.
But life goes on in any aspect, whether you lose someone important to you, or your dreams come true, or you finally get that job that you want, or you lose that job you want. Life keeps going. The credits don't roll for us until they roll. Often, what feels like the credits rolling is just it keeps going.
Yeah,
And
there's a whole additional life with people and all the
exactly.
layers. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I felt that, getting to explore that with Brock, it has been one of the most creatively fulfilling experiences of my life.
Calvin said in chat says something that I think really encapsulates what this discussion's all about, and that's the idea of being able to get emotionally attached to NPCs is one of the special things about tabletop roleplay games, and I agree with that, especially when you're playing with people that you like and they're an awesome group, and I think that is the thing that we don't spend enough time, I think, appreciating.
Oh yeah. I've been DMing for almost as long as I've been playing, and I say that Brock is the most creatively fulfilling thing I've ever done. That is a lie, because the most creatively fulfilling thing I've ever done was the NPC I didn't expect to catch on, Mosey Buzzoff.
Okay, who is Mosey Buzz?
So,
I'm not saying it right. Say it again. Mosey Buzzsaw?
Buzz Off.
Oh, okay, Buzz Off. Mosey Buzz Off. Now, which one of these do I have the art for Mosey?
That is the Afro child with a gun. Not that one, not that one. Nope. Maybe.
This
There he is.
Yeah,
That's
take
my boy.
All right, let's talk to
So,
me about this gentleman in a pair of Wraith pants.
so, to tell that story, I have to give a little more backstory on Brock. So, Brock Bollea, originally came from a city that I created within the Mayhemverse called Highwind City.
Okay.
Which is on Michigan's west coast. Yes, it's a west coast. We have Big Lick. And within Highwind, well, not within, but underneath Highwind, there is an entire other city. Kind of based on a lot of cyberpunk works that I've enjoyed, or
Okay.
just urban decay pictures
Is it
on
kind of a
Reddit.
Morlocky thing, or is it
Yeah,
okay?
very Morlocky.
Yeah.
The real world inspiration for it, not a lot of people know this, but underneath Detroit, there are actually like miles and miles of salt mines. And
Really? I didn't
yeah,
know.
and back before regulations were a thing, these miners would essentially create like little cities within the mines
Yeah,
where
yeah.
like speakeasies and stuff like that. And that kind of inspired the idea for the underground. I know I got real creative with the name there, Troy. Thank you.
I was
Um,
just gonna say, yeah, you beat me to it.
and Brock Bollea was someone who he was mostly on the surface level of Highwind City, which I refer to as Sunnyside Highwind.
Okay.
Um, but he would occasionally have to find himself going into the underground to deal with whatever he had to deal with. And it is within the underground where he would have met this character, Mosey Buzzoff. Mosey is a child that grew up in the underground. The two things that he heard the most often were Mosey on a Long Kid or Buzz Off, so much that he eventually just figured that's his name. Uh,
Oh,
and
I get
he
it. Okay, sure, sure.
and he has the post-human ability. Post-human is what we call people with powers within the Mayhemverse.
Mm-hmm.
He has the post-human ability that he cannot be lied to,
Oh,
and
cool.
he can only speak the truth. And
Oh,
those who
tough.
hear him know that he speaks the truth. Um, I
Oh,
int-
no, is the power that people hear it and know that it's the truth. They're convinced and
yes.
okay, gotcha.
Uh,
Interesting. Okay.
Mosey Buzzoff wasn't supposed to be a Christ allegory, but it kind of accidentally became one a little
A
bit.
little
And
bit, yeah, a little bit, yeah.
it's not my favorite development, but I can work with it, I guess.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
and I had introduced Mosey. RC and I decided in season 2 that it would be really funny if for an arc I DM'd and he was a player and we didn't tell Dan or Rachel. We called it the old Texas switcheroo.
Okay.
Um and
No, wait, you've
during
done this?
yes, yes,
I
this is
love it.
episode 48 and 49 of the show. It's
Yeah.
The Gears Keep Turning in Sins of the Father. Those are the episode names. If
Okay.
you'd like to go check those out for yourself. But
Absolutely, yeah.
within this adventure, basically the whole idea was Brock Bollea got kidnapped by someone with ties to a villain from his past, and the other players had to come to the underground in Highwind City to rescue him. And as one of the guiding characters in my fetch quest in disguise, um, I decided to introduce Mosey. This was a character who, the underground, I had worked very closely with my friend Deimos to create. This predates me having anything to do with the Mayhemverse by
Yeah.
half a decade, I'd say. But I saw that I had the opportunity to introduce Mosey here, and I jumped on it, and within 5 sentences, everyone had declared their love for Mosey Buzzoff. And that love only got deeper and deeper and deeper the more opportunities I've gotten to play with him. So to circle all of this back to Calvin's comment that inspired this entire little tangent, um, the only thing better than emotionally attaching yourself to an NPC within the game is being the guy who plays that NPC.
All
I
right. So
don't
now,
know if that's the original point I was trying to make, but I kind of lost myself somewhere in story time. So
honestly, I don't think you did. I think that we're following that trail of why, the texture that these NPCs bring to your character and the aspects of them, their strengths, and that they're NPCs plus.
yeah, that's a good way of putting it. N plus C.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I do indeed. And I like those pants. As an aging raver, I approve.
I I had so much fun designing Mosey. Deimos had no idea that this is what I'd done to his sweet little boy, but he was very happy with what happened.
Real quick question: who did the art?
That is a fantastic question that I'm sure RC will answer in
Yeah,
the
RC. Yeah,
chat.
just drop the name in chat, and we'll
Yeah,
toot that horn. It's great.
RC is the liaison between artist and the rest of us slap nuts.
Really, seriously,
So,
RC is like the connective tissue.
I mean, to call RC the glue that holds the show together is still vastly underselling what RC does for the show.
Right. Glue doesn't have nothing. Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. So just real quick, here's the cast.
Yes, so
Looking fancy. It's a little small, but if I blow
indeed.
it up too much, it'll be a little pixelated.
I want to say that one was done by Jen Evans. I'm sure RC will correct me if I'm wrong.
Dr. Demas 33 on Fiverr.
The dude's name is Dr. Demas.
Dr.
That's
Demas.
awesome.
90. Okay, yeah. So RC says about 95% of the art on the show.
Yeah, I believe that the only art for the show that was not done by him was that picture of the cast that you were just looking at,
Yeah.
as well as a couple of characters that we got done for Christmas stream. Like the
Yeah, you're right.
yeah,
Jen
those are
Evans.
all my
Yeah.
characters for the Christmas stream. Okay, cool. I do know things. Look at
You
me.
know them. You know some things. Okay, so here's a question for you then. All right, so here's your son. Now, do we want to take a look at some of the other characters you've invited to come with you?
Yes,
Who's
absolutely.
up next? Whoever's next, or do you want to pick someone?
Let's just see who pops up next. I feel like, yup, I had a feeling it was going to be one of these three. So, as I mentioned earlier, Brock's story within the podcast begins with him trying to get revenge on the people that killed his husband. This is one of those people.
Well, and I do believe too that it surprised me to hear that, but you said that so Brock's fiance was a man. Okay,
Yes,
great.
Brock as a character is pansexual, just like I am. And I liked the idea of I wish I could remember who I had sort of based their maybe it's best that I don't remember these people's names because Brock and
yeah.
Brock and Anthony's story doesn't have a happy ending.
Right.
But long story short, I had a friend who had been in a very long-term relationship with a woman, had children with this woman, wound up leaving her, and just had this beautiful, healthy, gorgeous relationship with a man who kind of helped him get his shit back together. And I sort of picked that up and plopped it into Brock's backstory.
Sure.
Just because, I wanted Brock to be part of this fun little rainbow that we're
right.
all
And
a
it
part
sounds to
of
me
here.
too like a bit of an inspiring, sort of relationships are tough and but the idea that they can work out and they can be healing and they can be amplifying and all of that. That's
exactly. Plus I, to really get this character in the dark place that he was in, having that suddenly torn away from you.
Yeah.
Another thing that I have sort of used the show to work through. Thankfully, I've never lost a fiance or a romantic partner. But I have had friends who I've lost very suddenly, very unexpectedly. And Brock Bollea is another avenue for me to
work through what's next. Yeah.
Yes. Look at RC correcting me on my own sexuality, but being right on Facebook. You're right. I'm asexual panromantic.
I'm not seeing that note.
He shot that to me on Facebook privately, probably not expecting me to read it out loud.
Well,
but that's genuinely hysterical because he's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said,
my friends genuinely know more about me than I do.
RC's he's the connective tissue. He holds it together. That's what he's got. That's his superpower in real life. All right. So now are we getting around to who this nefarious individual?
Yes. So sorry.
No, we're good. We're good.
So sorry to do this again, but let me take you back.
Let's go that way. Yeah.
So Brock got his powers in Iraq. He had a very all-American boy childhood. 9/11 happens. He enrolls in the military. While he's over there, him and a group of people in the middle of an altercation get hit with some kind of funny gas.
Okay.
It kills half of them. It gives the other half of them power.
Yikes.
those who had powers would be put together in a black ops group, officially known as Operation Coffee Pot, because military operations all have silly names like
Sure they
that.
do.
But kind of internally known as the Post-Human Platoon. They exist for a while. A couple of them go rogue. The Post-Human Platoon's last official mission is to take out the rogue members. They
Oh,
are all given dishonorable discharges.
okay. They're a mess that needs to be cleaned up.
Yes. So Brock Bollea was on the Post-Human Platoon. He goes on, becomes a superhero, doesn't really interact with many of the people from Operation Coffee Pot. I think that the only one who he regularly kept up with was a character named Data Kraken, who was kind of Brock's guy in a chair.
Hmm.
Um, but meanwhile, the other surviving members of the Post-Human Platoon would all find themselves becoming radicalized individuals. I'm sorry, RC again, correcting me. I said dishonorable discharge. They all had honorable discharges.
Oh,
My
I gotcha.
apologies.
Okay, so but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was my B.
No worries.
Thank you, RC.
Glad you. Yeah.
Whether it be on a live stream or on the show, you are my lifeline, baby boy. I love you. But yeah, they were all honorably discharged. Brock goes on to become a superhero. Everyone else becomes involved in some rather Magneto-y business,
Oh,
kind of
sure.
post-human supremacy
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um, and they would go on to become the Midnight Gang. The person who we are looking at here is Tatsumaru Takahashi, aka the Vapor Kappa.
Oh, wait a minute. No, wait a minute.
Um,
He's part of the Gnag, right?
yes, he is part of the Midnight
God,
Gang.
that's what I thought. Yeah, yeah.
Um, his abilities are that he is able to his body is able to evaporate into vapor
I
and
see.
reform somewhere else. So I kind of made him kind of Mortal Kombat robot ninja
Yeah, I
adjacent.
get that vibe.
Um but yeah, the Midnight Gang would end up becoming this group of you know super heroic terrorist type butt pipes. And long story short, eventually they would come to Highwind to try and rob something. And this guy, if you hit right, I think I know who's going to pop up. If you want to flip over to the
Oh,
next
yes, I
picture
can. Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. Let me do that.
Yup, exactly who I was hoping for. When that guy, Midnight Hydra, would end up killing Anthony, Brock's partner. To give a little more context, Brock and Anthony were both police officers, and they actually met on the force. So Brock goes to try and stop the Midnight Gang as Lazerhawk. Anthony shows up in uniform, of course, on the day he was supposed to retire because season
Oh,
one
that's how
Brock
it
is
works. That's
cliche.
how it works with these super
Uh,
stories. Yep.
and that man, the Midnight Hydra, would be the one to kill Anthony.
Oh no.
Of course, to put a little more sprinkle of cliche on there, Brock Bollea and Midnight Hydra, while part of the Post-Human Platoon, were of course best friends.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, what's going on with his curly fingernails of green
So
paint?
Midnight Hydra's ability is that he is able to manipulate like this neon gas. Like, I'm trying to think of the name of the video game. I think it was one of the infamous games where like one of the characters could essentially like attack people with neon. And I thought that was a really cool idea, so I worked it for Midnight Hydra, where it's more that he has these neon tendrils that he can
Okay.
attack with. So that is a representation of what that might look like.
Phenomenal. It's great
Uh,
looking. Yeah.
just, just out of all the designs that we've done, Midnight Hydra is definitely one of my favorite ones. I I sometimes accost RC a little
Yeah.
bit because a lot of his designs are more like tactical and something you might see in a movie, while I lean heavy into the comic book aesthetic of it. This is RC leaning into the comic book aesthetic of it, and oh my goodness, he did such a the visor was all Robert,
Love.
and the visor is dope.
Awesome. All right, now do we are we gonna flip to the next one?
Yes. The last one is the third member of the Midnight Gang that we have character art for, Crystal Tiger. Her power is kind of the most um up front. What you see is what you get. She's a big, strong crystal lady.
Okay.
Um,
Unbreakable
she is
skin, and does she get any extra strength or anything, or is she just like
oh yeah, she is a juggernaut. She is the powerhouse of the Midnight Gang, and also Midnight Hydra's lover.
aha
I won't go in more
complications?
detail, but boy, howdy, did we bust an intimate moment once.
Yeah, we should have said this at the beginning of the show, but folks like Claude who are just getting to sort of the early 20s or the mid to late actually 20s of the episodes might find a spoiler or two, a surprise.
I'm trying to be as light as humanly possible on them, but due to the nature of the discussion being had, I can't avoid them
That's
all.
true. That is true.
But not we don't have art for the last two members of the Midnight
Hmm.
Gang. But because they might be appearing in Redacted Rangers sometime soon. We'll see how that goes, but I feel like I can briefly touch on them. So Acid Armadillo is kind of another like what you see is what you get kind of
Yeah.
character. He's just sort of this stout, round, disgusting looking thing that can, emit acid from all of its
Oh,
orifices,
okay.
and it's
Yeah,
gross.
grody.
And then on the complete opposite end of that is Glass Peacock, a very pompous, vain character whose ability comes in two forms. The first is that they are able to produce these gusts of wind. And the second is that they can turn sand into glass.
Oh, okay.
So they create these, dust devil vortex things,
Sure.
throw a bunch of sand in it, turn it into glass, and all of a sudden it's ripping a man apart.
Oh, I see. I thought you're like, all of a sudden you've got a museum piece, So you've got these
All of a sudden
spinning
you
shards
are
of, yeah.
exactly. All of a sudden you are a museum piece, and that piece is in the Museum of Death.
Right. That's right.
So very, it's definitely the one of the more gruesome powers that I've been able to get away with giving someone on here.
It is definitely
Oh yeah,
evocative, if it's evoking, death.
indeed. There's this character from the deserters. That's what I call the people who turned on Operation Coffee Pot, the people who they had to kill in their final mission, who has like blood themed powers,
Ooh, like a
and there was
bloodbender
certain
kind of power or a
more so that they can make weaponry out of blood.
Oh, okay.
Kind of being able to use the iron in that to be able to make like
Oh, so they're
bullets
making
and
projectiles
blades
and
and
things.
yeah, whatever he happens to do. RC ixnayed the idea of him doing that via self mutilation,
Yeah.
but
Well, I
you know,
mean, with maybe some wisdom, but that's quite a complication
yeah, it's
and kind of unseen
I've
though,
got a
right?
dark twisted little mind
Well,
sometimes.
here's the thing. Not, I mean, I would say in comparative analysis, you know, I've heard some pretty weird things about what people, kind of how they create their character and the links that they go to make them so very unique. And sometimes you're just like, wow, that was quite a walk. But also you're temporary. These aren't the good guys, right? These
Hmm?
aren't the good guys, right? I mean, they're
Oh, the Midnight Gang,
yeah,
definitely
that's
not.
right. Um, Darcy says, I got to pump the brakes on the Brandon mobile on occasion. I like that.
Claude, the Midnight Gang is a little full, but lucky for you, the Midnight Gnag has an opening. So,
all right, Claude, congratulations. You've been conscripted.
Yeah. You just gotta gnag him about it a little bit. Huh? 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 Every day I wake up in pain.
So here's a question. If Claude was the first member of the Gnag, how would you stat him up?
Well, Claude would have to become the Gravy Squatch.
Oh no.
The Gravy Squatch.
Gravy Squatch is not a villain.
Needs an origin story. He is in the Mayhemverse.
Oh, you monsters.
I am a sick little man.
You are a monster.
Don't let
making
my
a
cheerful
monster
cherub-like appearance fool
out of
you.
sweet gravy creatures, gravy-based creatures.
Midnight Knack is the new Phantom name.
I love it. I love it.
I support it. It's canon now. Damn it.
Just everybody out there listening, just know that that is not official. That is some other weird. That's some other weird alternative reality. Because our Gravy Squatch is sweet and kind and friendly. And he's a good boy. A good boy.
Oh, good. I love that you had that just ready.
Isn't that so funny? I got it at the ready at all times, and I didn't even mean to. But if you're gonna malign Gravy Squatch, you best be ready for an appearance. He's gonna fill your shoes with gravy.
To quote silly movie, man, life finds a way.
That's right. Life finds a way. Cool. Okay, so we've gone through the Midnight Gang. We've talked a bit about sort of the extended cast of characters and that support Brock. How does Brock do in this ensemble? How is Brock as an ensemble player?
So, when I began playing Brock, I played him as a very prickly individual.
Sure.
Took him more or less the entirety of season 1. Brock's involvement in season 1, I came in halfway through. But Brock's entire stint through season 1 and like a little chunk of season 2 before Brock was, willing to admit that he was friends with these people who he fought crime with. So, the initial playing of Brock was very, angry. He'd go off and do things on his own quite a bit, worried that other people were just going to slow him down. Very loud and threatening to a lot of the villain characters. I actually think that I'm the only character with a catchphrase, and that comes from that intimidation factor from Brock. I feel like I have to say the catchphrase now.
I was going to demand, yeah.
Now I'm going to ask you a series of very basic questions, and you're going to give me a series of very basic answers. Do we have an understanding?
All right. I love it. I like it.
He said the line. But as as it's become softer, he's a lot more of a team player.
Sure.
Brock will actually be more proactive in checking in with his teammates. He still goes off and does his own thing, probably a little more often than he should. But usually that's Brandon going, okay, time to advance plot, which I'm working on as a player. That's something that I'm very guilty of. I've got a little bit of main character syndrome, and that's something that I'm trying to fix. But
everyone's been so stabby around episodes I've been watching. Yeah.
No, I was about to put all of that on Ruby, but Yardak's got a spear too, so I'm sure Myra could have ran real quick and grabbed a couple of swords. Essentially just trying to play him as like a nicer, like more team player, trying to work with the people who he's with.
Right. Gotcha. No, I love that. And I love that the evolution of the character as it's reflected in sort of your trajectory it is sort of applies in this way as well. And you know, and it is a universal truth, um, in that the converse proves the rule of you hang around with people long enough, you either love them or you hate them. And if you find a chord and you're doing the thing, and you're evolving and you are, you know, living for today in a better way than you were yesterday, it's difficult, maybe near impossible, not to make a connection. So I think that's, you know, that's reality.
Oh yeah, and I mean, like, getting to play through Brock and naturally go from not knowing these people at all to I think it's safe to say that it's at the point where Brock views Yardak as like a younger brother, and
Sure.
um I guess depending on the day, the relationship, like, Brock would feel like a younger sister type kinship, or I could even see in like rougher days him kind of taking a more like fatherly role there, or
Sure.
trying to
Maybe,
care
yeah.
for her in the same way as
So here's a
um
question I have for you. Uh, how closely does Brock's evolution line up with yours in the context of sort of becoming deeper friends with the cast and sort of developing these moments over time?
um I would say very much so. I knew RC and Rachel before I started doing the show. We became friends through a group of similar minded online slapnuts. I think that's what I'll call ourselves.
Slap nuts.
Um, but you know, there I was always sort of on the outskirts at the time just because of my own
Where you were at, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I had actually completely dropped off the face of the earth for both RC and Rachel for years until RC got a hold of me one day to make the connection for the podcast. And eventually, I end up coming on it. I end up reconnecting with Rachel. I meet Dan. And yeah, I feel like a lot of the evolution of Brock becoming closer with these characters. I actually haven't thought about it until now, but I imagine that a lot of that does come down to me becoming friends with Dan IRL, and getting to reconnect with RC and Rachel and become better friends with them than I ever was before.
Right.
It used to be that, RC and I would talk once a fiscal quarter, and Rachel and I would only ever see each other in like Google Plus Hangouts. We never talked outside of that.
Right.
I talk to these people every day now.
Yeah, you have preserved or reserved a space in your life that is, you know, filled with those folks and allowed them to
Exactly.
be close to you. And yeah, yeah. And I can see how that would influence the characters that you play.
Oh, absolutely.
I love it. So here's the thing. We've been talking for some time now, and we could talk for another, you know, what have we been doing this for about an hour?
About an hour.
About an hour. Uh, I want to say that I think that one of the special opportunities with the drafting table is to kind of get into the, you know, how deep do people go when it comes to these character, you know, creations, and you know, and I'm certain we'll get somebody on here who's like, no, I just created a character and I just love it, and that's okay too. Um, we did talk a little bit about some of the more emotional connections and some of the sort of frameworks that surround this character that are both about, like, you know, evolution and change and redemption, and you know, that sort of message of keep going, keep trying, keep doing, and something vaguely right happens. You know what I mean? Maybe not the perfect, maybe not always the perfect thing, or maybe you get to a good thing with a little bit of the sadness of the last thing, you know, impacting you. But
I like that line a lot, Troy. If y'all hear me say the phrase "things have gone vaguely right" on Masks of Mayhem in the near future, you mind your damn business.
it's a good thing. It's a good thing, you know. But you know what else is a good thing? It's just getting an opportunity to sit down and just have this chat. Because I don't think, you know, we don't take these opportunities to unpack and sort of talk about this stuff. and as somebody who works for Green Ronin, to be able to sit down with somebody who is really invested and has invested both time and treasure and emotional, sort of currency into creating a very significant sort of series of life. I mean, like this is the real deal. This is real stuff. It's not you're not role playing. You're living.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when it comes to creating a Mutants and Masterminds character, what are some things? Let's as we kind of wind down. What are some of the things you would recommend people do? Because people come with a bunch of different skills. Like I am just math challenged. I look at numbers. I'm just like, no. I break out into a cold sweat. But there's room for people of all sort of skills and cross
Oh,
disciplines and all that, especially as it relates to character creation. So what would you say to somebody who's like, I want to create an avatar and kind of work through some stuff and have some fun as a hero or a villain or whatever?
Um, the the two bits of advice that I have are going to sound contradictory to one another, but they work together perfectly, and I can go into it. But
Sure.
it would be to for those starting off, write what you know, but be open to things wildly outside your wheelhouse.
Sure.
Going with what you know is it's great because you know it. You don't need to look anything up on about it. You have the information in your head already.
That's right.
So while you're trying to learn this new thing, in this case, building characters, having a foundation based on things that you are well versed in is going to be very handy.
Yeah.
Like I've mentioned previously, Brock Bollea is a mix of my trauma, my father's trauma, and a bunch of tropes from movies I like. Solid foundation. It's things I am intimately aware of. If I don't know, if you drive a forklift, that's something to start with, I guess. Actually,
Sure.
actually, why did I
You're
say that? I have immediately fallen in love with forklift, man.
Hey, I'm just saying you're very close to a mech.
Right. Yeah, aliens did it.
That's what I'm
Um,
saying. Yeah, Ripley.
but even actually, that's a perfect example. Even if it is something mundane, like you drive a forklift,
Yeah,
you know, things can be done with that.
that's
And
right.
the alien queen was murdered by a forklift. Essentially, I don't actually think that they. No, they did. I mix
Murdered or
up my movies.
inconvenienced.
Inconvenienced, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Temporarily delayed, I think might have been the.
But if you're a teacher, then there's nothing wrong with having the foundation of like that's your character's day job. But at the same token, to be able to do something interesting with that, you need to be able to also look wildly outside of your wheelhouse. And the easiest way to do that is to just keep an open mind and always be checking out new things. Watching new movies, reading new books, watching new shows. Just checking stuff out on YouTube. With the magic of the internet, that part has never been easier.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah, I love
so
the advice. I think it's very solid advice, and I think the notion of start with what you know and then drop yourself into something you don't, and yeah,
exactly, and I feel like this is as a final bit of advice. I feel like this goes without saying, but clearly it needs to be said because this is a lesson that I've had to learn many times throughout my life.
sure.
Ask for help when you need it. There's discords, there's subreddits. Well, maybe not right at this moment. I have no idea what the current status of the Mutants and Masterminds subreddit is because of the protests, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I think that yeah, I'm not sure either, but yeah, Reddit needs to get their
Yeah,
stuff
there,
together. It's a
like
mess.
like there's old school forums that still exist out there. Like there are
Yeah,
places where you can go to ask for help.
and there
So
are tools to build those
exactly,
places if you don't find them. And
exactly.
yeah, our entire community is filled with people who have stepped up and created really vibrant, bustling communities and contribute as well. One of the places you can go, Mutants Masterminds Monday. Right? No, you can come and
Indeed.
hang out, and So I let me say this: I think that things like words of wisdom that I sort of I find life. It kind of gives me inspiration. Are things like never stop, never stopping, and never
Exactly.
start stopping. To like almost scholarly contributions to our discussion today. That, of course, coming from RC and Claude, respectively, or reverse that, but you get it. Um, Here's the thing, friend. You engage with the stream when we, do Mutant Smash Minds Monday. You are a blast. We have really good natured, wholesome fun, and it's it's a blast. And I have really appreciated the opportunity to get to know you, the person, as well, outside of just being just wicked funny and and a heart of gold. You have a creative power within you that is quite impressive, and you're just a good person as well, and I appreciate that quite a bit. And I really appreciate you hanging out and just spending a little time talking about the character and sharing a little bit about yourself as well.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, I thank you for the opportunity to come on here and do this. But just as a whole, I'd like to take a quick minute to be cheesy and thank the Mutants and Masterminds community for. Oh God, how did I word it when I remember how I worded it. Thank you for being so welcoming to a weird little thing like me. I remember how I worded that. Yeah. But genuinely, this is an incredible community filled with wonderful, creative people.
Yeah.
And you have all been extraordinarily welcoming, both in chat and more officially on the Green Ronin team. And yeah, I just wanted to thank you for that, as well as the opportunity to come on and talk about my favorite little sad alcoholic.
I love it, and I think that this is as good a place as any to sort of stop. But I have a question for you before we do that. Would you come back maybe for a panel discussion and get into some of the more meta, sort of considerations around like powers and how to stat up characters and that kind of thing with some of
Um,
the other folks that have been on?
I would happily come on for something like that. However, I'd be foolish not to say that if we're talking about stats and like the nitty gritty of it, RC's the guy you want.
Oh, we'll get RC for
Not to
sure,
not to
for sure.
volunteer RC for something without him knowing, but I can offer anecdotal stuff, but RC's
Yeah,
understanding of the game and the mechanics.
but
I'm great for
RC will have
building.
his
Yeah,
RC will have his time in the sun. You would be willing to join us?
oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
great, great.
Anything you need me for, Troy, I'm yours.
Right on, friend. All right. Well, listen, everybody, this has been The Drafting Table, and I'm your host, Disembodied Troy. My deep thanks and just appreciation and just joy at having Pope Brandon Brownson hanging out with us. I want to thank everybody in chat as well, Claude and RC, and I think we had, who else do we have in there? Quite a few people.
Calvin B.
That's right, Calvin. That's the name I was trying to remember. I really appreciate your feedback as well. We do this sometimes. So we've got an episode waiting in the wings from our buddy Glyph. It's coming, Glyph, I promise. But Adobe on me, Adobe, which is why we're doing this one live. But maybe you're hanging on to a character idea. You want to talk about aspects of your Mutants and Masterminds character evolution. Maybe you want to stick to the numbers. Maybe you want to talk about sort of that min-maxy kind of stuff. Whatever it is, that's what the drafting table is all about. It doesn't have to be a moment of kind of cathartic sharing, but it's certainly nice when it that can happen. But we can also we can mathematize it and really it takes all kinds. And so do me a favor, if you're interested, even tepidly, maybe you just got a little tentative interest, send a note to let's play at greenronin.com. And yes, I want to say thanks to RC too. There's a couple things that you might want to check out in the links. If you're watching this right after we publish it, you're not going to see the chat yet. but there are links in there. For instance, you want to head over to masksandmayhem.com. That will get you plugged right into the podcast. Now, friend, where can they find you?
Right. So, well, I just put my Twitter on private, and I'm not planning on unprivating for a very, very long time. So the best place you can follow me is on Spotify, where
Okay.
you can listen to 39 albums worth of beats, bangers, and bops by yours truly, Pope, Brandon Brownson. Only like 7 of them have rap songs about wieners.
Well, it seems like an appropriate time to go out with a little bit of your tune. What is this again?
This is I think this is off of the album Exhilarating Music to Be Stuck in Traffic To.
It sure is that. I want to thank you again, my friend. Everybody else, have a great weekend on this Friday. And if you're listening to it on a Monday, have a great rest of your week. And we will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
I love you all.